Welcome everybody to the show. This is Counter Clipping show number 185 for August, what's the date? The 12th, 2024. So I hope everybody is having a good night tonight. As a couple of people have already mentioned, the weather is lovely here in Northeast Ohio, so we are happily enjoying the absolute rubbish ruin that is our lawn. I'll talk about that a little bit tonight, and I might actually have a video on it too, because I did take some video, so we'll talk about that. So what we're gonna have on deck tonight, we are still clipping the Greatest Day Utah Beach. I have set up a aggressive clipping regimen here this evening, but I'm not going to finish tonight. I'm not going to try and lie to myself. We are once again drinking Mayor Pingree, 47%. This is very good. Thank you, Mr. John Longshore. So, what do we got on tap tonight? There's no real news tonight. I got like personal stuff, but we'll hopefully not take too long with that. So I'll remind everybody before we get started to please do like or thumbs up or whatever the video, depending on what platform you are on. And subscribe to the channel or follow or whatever you do wherever you are. We have super chats and super stickers on. That is an excellent way to support the channel, as well as a great way to get your comment highlighted so that I don't miss it. We, as usual, we are already over 100 people here in the chat this evening. I will miss lots of comments. So if you want to make sure I reply, whether it's satisfactory or not, go ahead and hit me with a super chat or super sticker, and it is much appreciated. So, what else do we got going on? We want to give a shout out to Stephen Pope, who joined us at the swordsman level as a new patron. There is a link to the Patreon, as well as a variety of other ways you can support the channel and the show in the video description. As well as the Noble Knight affiliate link. And big shout out to Noble Knight Games, who is the official sponsor of the Counter Clipping show. We are currently engaged on our third I think. Yeah, third, I think, campaign with Noble Knight. If you're going to shop with Noble Knight anyway, they are a great place to shop. They are great people with fabulous customer service. You should check out the affiliate link because if you use it, I will get a little bit of a kickback in the form of store credit, and we are working towards... Where's the banner? There we go. There's the banner. We haven't made any progress because I haven't had the credit roll in for the month yet. So once that happens, we'll have an update here. But right now, we are only 20% of the way toward getting the remaining SPI soapboxes in whatever order they become available in. It seems likely that NATO Division Commander will, in fact, be the next one on deck because that is relatively easy to get as SPI soapboxes go. Mech War 2 is a little bit harder, and Highway to the Reich and Vok Dam Rhine are harder still. I don't see Vok Dam Rhine that often, so we'll see when it comes up. We'll see. In any case, so yak cheese. Iggy Krichtel has yak cheese in the house. That sounds like it's not a super fun experience to have your esophagus blocked by yak cheese, but I am not a subject matter expert on this particular topic, so I can imagine that he was, in fact, extremely uncomfortable. So, what else do we got here to start the show with? Well, I don't see anything else on the list, so let's say hello to Alan Salazar, Alistair Logie, B. Atkins, Bill Simone, Board Gaming Geezer, Bob Cometh, Brent McCabe, Chad Kennedy, Charles Latorre, Chet Bell, Chris Japp, Commando Solo 193, Dow Wendnard, Daniel Silverthorne, David Imperato, David Zell, Doug Blayart, E4 Airman, Ed Holtzman, Eric Goebel, Eric Schaefer, HUN644 New, Iggy Krichtel, the legend himself, Fucko, is here. Jason W., Jeff Anderson, Jeff Beeler, Jeffrey Wesovich, Jeffrey Edwards, Joe Hammond, Joe Okabayashi, John Clark, Carl Crater from the Wargame Bootcamp, Kyle Harris, Lee Grant, Marty Sample is here, Meandering Mike, Michael Evanzini, Mike Reed, Molotov Cockatiel from Molotov Cockatiel Games, who we had on the Chit Show just recently, so check that out. Patchwork Pictures, Paul Dangle, Paw Paw, Percy Block, welcome to the channel. Perfidious Albion, Perry Sparopoulos, Rob Johnson, Rob Moffat, Ryan Huard, Scott Bell, Sofa Kings, welcome back. Tailwind, Tim Reenhaw, Tony Mammal, Vicky, welcome back to the show. Vince Ree and William Bird, and whoever I have missed, I apologize. It's YouTube's fault, not mine. So there we go. And Hex, see, this was like a minute and a half ago, and Hexy says hello, and I did not, he's not on the list. Don't ask me. So in any case, Hexy, welcome back. All right, so tonight's topic is Wargaming Ancient Rome, and I'm going to try and tackle that from a couple different angles as far as what kinds of games we might be able to see, some of which we may or may not consider war games, but that's okay. We're talking about war games and Ancient Rome, and the games I have on the list are close enough. And I might talk a little bit about that too, actually. So, in any case... yes, and my understanding, while I have not had any customer service experiences at all with DVG games, is my understanding is that this is very good news, because I think there have been some unhappy people since she left, and hopefully they will be happy again now that she is back. So welcome back to DVG to Sarah Burson. In any case, it is obviously a family business. So, welcome everybody. John C. from the sunny Philippines. John, I apologize. Hope everything's going okay down there. Have you ordered your copy of OCS Luzon yet? I am wondering. So, in the sunny Philippines, has it hit the sunny Philippines yet? I would think so. It's been out for some time. Somebody down there surely has it. In any case. And I guess there is one piece of news, and I'm going to be super quick with this, because I don't know that there's anybody here tonight that this will be important for, but I'm going to mention it anyway and hopefully spend about 30 seconds on it. If there is anybody here who is making Dungeons & Dragons content and you intend to cover the new edition of Dungeons & Dragons from Wizards of the Coast, be very careful about what you show in your video and what you don't, because Wizards of the Coast... because they're swell people over there at Wizards of the Coast are sending out copyright strikes to YouTube channels for covering the new D&D Player's Handbook. So my official position on Wizards of the Coast is that they can go fuck themselves, and be warned if you want to make that kind of content. So you should get it, John. You should get it. It might never go on sale. That's the problem. But it's a good way to learn OCS, is all I'm saying. Oh, I got to get this. Yeah, this is the new Labatai game. It just went on pre-order. I should have actually put a news item up for this. The new Lavatai game from Marshall Enterprises is Lavatai de Ekmal. That is a pretty important battle, and there's really not that many games on it. So I would prefer to grab that when I can. It's fairly expensive, but I mean they print a couple hundred copies of it. It's they're a boutique publisher if anybody is. So I'm disinclined to complain about the price while observing and agreeing with people who say they don't want to buy it because of the price, right? So yes, but I'm aware it's not leaked, and in fact they lifted the embargo and they are still sending out copyright strikes to YouTube channels. That is in fact the problem, and people could just buy it at Gen Con too. So in any case, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. I just thought I would throw a brief warning out. The TikTok people got the got the 15-second short that basically said that. Mr. Carl Fung, thanks for stopping by, much appreciated. You guys don't have any Ancient Rome games over there. I think that's not actually true anymore since Storm Over Jerusalem came out, which I didn't put on this list actually, even though it would be a pretty accessible Ancient Rome game if you're interested in this particular topic. And we will cover this topic because there's very thoroughly this week, actually, because the new Strategy and Tactics magazine is out. You'll see an unboxing of it on Thursday, and it contains a game called Siege of Jerusalem AD 70, which is a Joe Miranda, as if I'm recalling correctly, it's a Joe Miranda design. Looks pretty nice. So check that out. And in the meantime, we've got an older game, which you can guess what that is, on the show tonight. So a lot of new stuff is filtering out at the moment. I just received a few very short hours ago, still in the shrink wrap, The Last Gamble from Compass Games and Danny Parker. It is in a 3-inch box that is extremely heavy. So I am not sure I have personally seen a heavier war game in that particular style of box. This thing was heavier, but it's in a box twice as big. So there's that. I don't know. John, thanks for stopping by. I don't know what the official release date was, but I know that over the last maybe 2 days, not counting today, we have seen people receive their copies. I can tell you that Danny has not gotten his copy yet, but that might simply be because he is farther from Connecticut than I am. So that is extremely possible. So in any case, I'm going to try and get 3 formations in Utah Beach done this evening. We'll see if I'm actually going to get 3 done. I'll get 2 done, definitely. But the next formation in line is the 709th Infantry Division, and they are an entire counter sheet. There's more on the next counter sheet. So they are literally an entire counter sheet on their own. So I don't know how precise Compass is about removing the pre-order price after stuff starts shipping. I can verify that it is shipping because there's nothing special happened with mine. I ordered it like everybody else. So Carl got his Last Gamble on Friday, so it clearly was shipping a little earlier than that. Having hefted the War of the Pacific and punched it, no, it is not. It's heavy. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as heavy as this. And when you open it, when you see the unboxing video, which is probably going to be a special non-Thursday unboxing whenever I'm ready to do it, then you will see why, because there's just a lot of contents in it. No, I was actually struck by this too. The opening, so the HBO series Rome is totally worth your time. It does kind of accelerate its way through a 30-year period or so of Roman history, well, at least a 15-year period of Roman history. But it is totally worth your time. There are really good portrayals of a variety of famous Roman individuals in that time, including Caesar and Pompey and Cato and Cicero and Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and everything is very well done. Although the second season is a bit rushed because they knew that was going to be the last season. That's a bit unfortunate, but I can live with it. So in the beginning of that, if you haven't seen it, there's like this battle scene where the sort of 2 viewpoint characters, the whole mini-series, Titus Pullo and the other guy, who I liked less, but he's supposed to be less likable, Lucius Vorenus. are in this battle, and it shows a sort of a super tactical perspective of how that battle went and how the Romans fought at the tactical level, and it's super duper interesting. A more tactical level than any of the games that we're going to see here and talk about here tonight. Yeah, we're working on this. Danny is willing, and we're talking about it. It's just a matter of figuring out a schedule for it. So we are that is being discussed. A lot of the women of that era as well. Augustus's mother, for example, Augustus's sister Octavia is in there. Caesar's lover, who is Brutus's mother, who I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but there's tons of great stuff in there. Oh God, I've never actually sat through this. I've seen clips. No, I mean, Cleopatra's better. The Elizabeth Taylor Cleopatra's better than Caligula by a lot, actually. The Elizabeth Taylor Cleopatra is fairly indulgent and not incredibly historically accurate, but at least it's got a lot of good performances by a lot of people that you'll recognize, like Richard Burton, and Martin Landau is in it, actually. And Roddy McDowall as Octavian, which is a really nice piece of casting, I might add. So, but yeah, I'm a super. Oh, we also have the new series on some cable network for those about to die or something like that. It's about gladiators and chariot racing and stuff like that. And Anthony Hopkins plays Vespasian, which I think he's a little too old at Anthony Hopkins' age to play Vespasian, but whatever. Okay, you at least have some interesting potential there for Vespasian's successors, let's put it that way. I'd be a little surprised, having seen nothing but the trailer, but knowing the history to some degree, I would be surprised if Anthony Hopkins' character lives the entire first season. Let me put it that way. I think we're going to get Titus, and Titus is going to last the rest of the season, and then after that it's going to be Domitian, because Domitian is the most interesting of the sons of Vespasian. So this helps too. This is a whole can of worms here that I don't know that I want to talk about on this show. This is a great movie, though. Actually, it's totally worth your time. And I don't know that it's it's a Roman era movie, right? But it's super contemporary and it's played for laughs, and it will give you some legitimate insights as to how the Romans operated, especially out in Judea at the time. But it's not really going to fall into the same category as something like Gladiator, let me put it that way. This is absolutely true. If you sent Sir Anthony Hopkins a script and he liked it and he wants to be in it, what are you going to do? Tell him no? No, we would rather get somebody else? No, you're not. No, nobody's going to say that. So yeah, he can basically do whatever he wants. Whew. I actually started watching History of the World Part 2 on Hulu because my wife wanted to subscribe to Hulu, and I agreed for a limited amount of time. And I watched about 3 episodes. They're about 25-minute episodes, as I recall, and it is uneven, let's put it that way. There's approximately enough good, funny material in there to have made a movie, but it's a huge mini, like 8-episode or whatever mini series. So it's not awful, but it's not great, let's put it that way. We're not even going to discuss the Caligula film this evening. I'll mention as just a piece of historiography, the literate class in the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire later, to some extent as well, as changes sort of gradually, is the senatorial class. Okay, so the people writing things are senators, and if you were unpopular with the Senate, if you were, for example, Caligula or Domitian, you were very likely to have a whole lot of vile shit said about you. And a lot of that survives, and a lot of that period, we don't have a lot of great sources for, to be completely honest about it. It just wasn't, it's not like this happened in the last 100 years, and we have basically an unlimited amount of source material, even if the original primary sources are no longer with us. This happened 2,000 years ago, and the historical record is very spotty. All right, so I thought I did watch the entire new version of The Producers, the musical movie one, rather than the earlier movie by Mel Brooks with Gene Wilder and Zero Mostel about a musical, which has a musical number in it. The movie is like a whole musical. And I thought it was dreadful. I thought the original movie is good and verging on brilliant at a particular moment in the film. And if you've seen it, you know what I mean. But the musical did not capture the magic of that. I'm not really into musicals. That's probably not helping overall. Tacitus is a good source, but Tacitus is only around for a certain amount of time, and he only writes about certain things, right? There are big gaps in our history of even the emperors, right? Domitian is one that there's not a lot of primary sources on. If you think about like the primary sources like Livy, for instance, Livy writes this massive dozens of volumes of Roman history, and some of it survives, particularly the early stuff, and some of the stuff around the Second Punic War survives, but a lot of Livy does not, and he wrote later in the 1st century CE, as I recall. I might be missing that date up. So, I believe this is, well, we don't know if it's true. It's a cool line if it was. Well, it's a cool line either way, to be honest. So sometimes the legend is cooler than the history. So my interest in ancient Rome goes back quite a long ways, right? I mean, nobody's going to find this terribly mysterious, right? There's even like memes nowadays about how American males are strangely interested in ancient Rome. And while I'll agree it can get weird, I will also say that my interest predates the current meme cycle. So there's that. And in fact, that's the reason when I went back to school and had to take a Latin class, or a language class, I picked Latin, which is maybe the worst, from a career standpoint, possibly the worst thing to put on a resume as foreign languages go, because it's totally worthless. There is some indication, there's some data to suggest that a lot of the contents of the Library of Alexandria, well, at least some of the the contents of the Library of Alexandria were either copied or removed before they burned it down. And there is controversy and conversation about who exactly burned it down, too. I don't think we have a particularly good record about that. There is a pretty good movie about Hypatia, who was one of the people at the Library of Alexandria with, I forget what it's called. I don't think it's called Hypatia. With Rachel Weisz as Hypatia, a very interesting historical figure from the period. Totally worthwhile. I would love to see Sulla on screen. And if you've ever seen that famous bust of Sulla, I think you'll agree with me that he looked a lot like Jack Palance, but it's unfortunately too late to cast Jack Palance. The oldest Rome wargame is Rome and Carthage. Thank you, Jeff Beeler. I had no idea. My list does not go back this far. My list goes back to SPI and Avalon Hill. And I, Claudius, is also totally worth your time. The books are too, by the way. And if you watch I, Claudius, you will see Patrick Stewart playing Sejanus with hair, and it's weird. I'm pretty sure he was bald even at the time. John C. from the sunny Philippines, thank you so much. Servilia, yes, that is the name of Brutus's mother, who is Caesar's lover, and the actress, whose name is kind of at the tip of my tongue, is also, believe it or not, in the Wheel of Time TV show from Amazon. It's not a big part. She plays Moraine's sister, which they visit, which is from the book, but it plays out differently than the book. I'm not going to talk about that tonight, because I could do it like a show on this. And maybe that'll be one of these specials that I keep threatening to do one of these days. In my copious free time. So, or I can ask where the bathroom is if I get lost in the Vatican. So there's that. Yes, this is the person. That is correct. Agora is the Hypatia movie. Yeah, it's they did this too. It was definitely produced for American audiences, let me put it that way. Lindsay Duncan, thank you, John C. Yeah, she is in the Wheel of Time, season 2, as I recall. I could be wrong about that, but I think season 2. So, in any case, so, I guess I'll talk about, before I get into the actual list, how are we doing on time? We're doing great on time. I want to talk about the tree thing. All right, so, when we bought the house, there were 10 very large, and by very large, I mean somewhere between 2 and 3.5 feet in diameter oak trees on the side of the house that were dead, or mostly dead. And by now, we've been here for 2 years, they were entirely dead. So I had one of the local tree service, I had like 5 different tree services come out. And don't forget, there was the Antonine. This is probably the thinking right now, is that the plague of Justinian was the bubonic plague, the Black Death, and that it's the same plague as the Antonine plague that killed Marcus Aurelius and a whole bunch of people a couple of hundred years before this. So plague was bad. All right. So anyway, trees. So I had a tree service come out, and they quoted me to take the trees out. Now, this is taking the trees out and hauling the lumber away. Okay, this isn't grinding the stumps or cleaning up the yard or any of that. $12,500, and that was about 2 years ago. So I'm pretty sure that if I brought them back out to get a new quote today, and thank you, John Stanley, for the support, it is much appreciated. They would charge me 14, 15, something like that. So, you know, lots of folks, including myself, don't necessarily have $14,000 or $15,000 in cash to blow. We didn't want to put it on a credit card. So basically, anytime a storm blew through, and we had a really bad storm on Monday, the windy part of it was pretty brief, fortunately, but the rains were pretty torrential, and the yard was littered with all this deadfall wood. Now that's a problem anyway, and a lot of the stuff that's in the front yard or the side yard is coming off of those dead trees because they're dead, right? So the back neighbor put me in touch with an Amish sawmill who came and cut the trees down for free. Now they left a lot of mess that will have to be cleaned up, and like I said, I took some video, and they had some fairly heavy equipment. They hauled the lumber out today. So it's now we've now reached the phase of the operation where I gotta probably get some people in here to clean the yard up. So this is not a dead tree. This is 10 dead trees, 10 really big dead trees. So to be fair, it was a big job. One of the local tree services I called in looked around, shook his head, said, "Yep, I can't handle this. You need heavy equipment and a crane and a bunch of other stuff, and we cannot deal with that." I've already, from the previous dead trees that fell over, I've already got tons of firewood and no friggin' fireplace. I ordered a fire pit, so fire pit will be here by the weekend. So we'll at least be able to burn some of this bullshit. I need an axe too to split all this stuff. But in any case, they managed to come down. They actually took 2 additional trees down that I asked them to take down, but they didn't haul them away because they were not usable wood. The Amish will haul this stuff off to a sawmill, cut it into planks, and make furniture or barns or whatever it is the Amish do with the wood. So even if I end up having to spend some change to clean the yard up, which I will, then I will have saved like 5 figures by letting the Amish cut the trees down and not having the tree service do it. So, tip if you live in an area where that kind of community is available. So I need a splitting wedge, but I'm actually pretty happy just doing it with an axe. There's a lot of huge stumps and stuff like that. If anybody's in the area and needs firewood, just let me know. So, yep, we will need a way to split. We didn't get rid of all the trees. You heard about this already. I mean, every time there was a big storm, we were out, sweating it out, sometimes hiding in the basement. Like on Monday when we had a tornado warning, or, having to come. And I had to get out of bed in the middle of the night one night and go outside and inspect because we heard something fall, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't some kind of serious damage that we needed to call in right away. And it wasn't. This is the second tree that hit that shed. So, well, they're getting the wood, right? So it's like free wood for the Amish, and it's massively discounted cleanup for me. So, we need to do this. I don't have a truck that'll haul it, haul the log splitter to my place, unfortunately. But that's probably not that big a deal to just get a hitch on the Subaru. So, and haul. It's not like you're hauling like a 50-ton trailer or something like that. Hauling a trailer with a log splitter on it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And we can rent one. There's like a equipment rental place right around the corner, more or less. So, Us living out in the boonies as we do, more or less. It's not really that boonyish, to be honest. So, so yeah, there's that. So the yard is a friggin' disaster right now. This is essentially accurate. Yeah, they took the trunks and left the limbs. So I got a lot of the limbs but there's also like huge stumps left that have to be cleaned up, and a lot of just miscellaneous wood. So, in any case, there you go. I could find out where they're selling the furniture and buy bookcases. Unfortunately, the bookcases they'd be more expensive than the IKEA bookcases, but they'd damn well be nicer. So, you know what? No, the guy I got in touch with, I don't know. He's definitely Amish, and he has got a cell phone. And furthermore, the guys that came out to do the actual work on Thursday and Friday, I think the guy that dropped off the equipment on Thursday was not Amish, but the guys who came out on Friday to actually do the work were definitely Amish. Let's put it that way. And have you seen my facial hair? You can consider me a subject matter expert in this regard. So, and they use chainsaws and stuff like that too. It's not like they were chopping everything down with axes or bringing a pack of trained beavers in to take the trees down or anything like that. So, you know, exactly what Amish group this is, I can't tell you. But thank you, Amish people, for coming out and helping with the trees, and nothing's going to fall on the house now. So that makes me happy. In any case. And yeah, it's not like I'm going to be having bonfires here every night. I split 5 or 6 logs and I'll have enough firewood for a week. So it will be no problem. Yeah, like I said, I don't know what the detail. I don't have any details about what the details are. So, I don't know. The Mennonites are a little less rigid with their rules, I think. But don't ask me. I can't. I don't have Mennonite facial hair, so I can't tell you. So, in any case, let's start talking about Wargaming Ancient Rome here. So let me pull up the slideshow. There we go. All right, let me change that over. All right, so we're going to start with what I think, if you're not familiar with this period, what I think is a really good entry-level Ancient Rome war game, Commands and Colors Ancients. Now, the core set here contains pretty much Romans versus Carthaginian stuff, so it's pretty much Punic Wars. But the additional sets for Commands and Colors Ancients bring in stuff like Greeks and Barbarians and stuff like that. So you've got a lot of flexibility here. The game system is very easy. You are not going to gain a great deal of tactical insight from this game system, but it is fun to play and relatively fast to play. So this is... I have no idea. I have no idea exactly where they are based. And I've only actually run into maybe 4 of these fellas that when they came out to look at the trees, and when they came out to actually do the work. They drove themselves to my place, too, so now a bunch of these are going to be tactical, but I tried to pick a mix of games that were tactical or operational, and there's not many of those, but a couple of them are on here, or strategic. And a couple of more offbeat things that are ancient Rome adjacent without necessarily being war games as such. Let's put it that way. So, but that I think will speak to war gamers because of the kind of games that they are, even if they are not war games, right? So, I don't think so, but you never know. I did not give them a business card. Let me put it that way. They did not seem terribly into hobby gaming to me. I will say that Perfidious Albion here says that most of the C and C Ancients, he finds the system a little wonky. When a unit is whittled down, it still retains its full attack value. That is not the case with every Commands and Colors game. Napoleonics doesn't work that way, as I recall. But it's easy to get them mixed up. Some of them do degrade strength, and you roll less dice with beaten up units, and others don't. I'm not positive that Napoleonics is the one I'm thinking of that doesn't, but this is totally accurate. But this is not really designed to be a simulation either. It's designed to be a fun and playable game. Perhaps they have a MySpace page. Molotov Cocktail says that Napoleonics does degrade. That's what I thought, but it's been a couple years since I've played it. And I've played a couple other Commands and Colors games that I don't remember how they behave specifically. I only played Medieval once, for example. So, but this is a real solid game. This is I have Napoleonics where I bought everything, and I have Ancients where I bought the core set, and because I was there and it was on sale or the price was whatever, I bought like 2 of the expansions as well, which means I got more blocks than I have ways to store blocks. But other than that, it's a fun game. The game system series, if you will, is real solid as a great entry level Roman wargaming experience. The interesting thing, I think, or one of the interesting things about Commands and Killers specifically is, what is the scale exactly? If you think about it at all, you'll find that there isn't a specific scale. The scale kind of floats around depending on exactly what battle it is that they are handling at the time in that particular scenario. That is one of the reasons why I don't think you're going to get a lot of great tactical insights, but you'll get good flavor out of this too. So solid game, worth everybody's time. So continuing, starting with some what I would consider easier to play and more accessible games. I would be remiss in not mentioning the number of solitaire games that are out from a variety of different publishers, including Hollandspiel and White Dog Games. Stilicho here is from Hollandspiel. This is a Robert Dulesky design. Now, this is a late Roman period dude here, Stilicho himself. He is a barbarian general that's basically running around like a fireman, keeping Rome together for a period of like a decade until he gets deposed and executed. And that's basically the end of the Western Roman Empire right there. So Stilicho, Last of the Romans here, is a solitaire game. It is a very well... Do I have this? No. This is not one of the ones that I bought because I can't keep up with all these. I left Conquest War Table. Welcome to the show. I have not included Conquest of the Empire on... These are not block games in this like Columbia game sense where there's like hidden information. They're just pieces. That's all they are. You could have used cubes or whatever. It's just that they have labels on them to tell you what kind of unit they are. All right. So, Perfectus Albion says the scale's open-ended, but you can design... This is true, too. You can have the same battle in some cases as like the regular version or the epic version on 3 boards. Conquest of the Empire is not on my list tonight, but I have played it, and I can tell you something about it. This was one of the old Milton Bradley Game Master series, along with Axis and Allies and Shogun and Broadsides and Boarding Parties and Fortress America, I think was the entire series. The only one of those I haven't played is Broadsides and Boarding Parties. And Conquest of the Empire was pretty fun, as I recall. I mean, basically, these are all kind of dressed up versions of Risk, fundamentally. The one that I liked the best out of this series was Shogun. The one that I liked the least was Axis and Allies, but I didn't play Fortress America until the 90s, and I didn't like it. So if you ask me today what my least favorite is, it is actually Fortress America. I think Axis and Allies is actually a little bit better. Stacking Limit, thanks for coming. Shogun, aka Samurai Swords, aka Ikoru. It's been redone several times under several different names, and I think they ran into trouble with the James Clavell people on the original name Shogun. But it's a pretty good game. Again, it's a fancified Risk fundamentally, but it's still fun. And it's probably the game about feudal Japan that I have enjoyed the most, to be honest, but I haven't played a lot of those. Chris Yap, thanks for stopping by, and I appreciate the support. A Caesar version would be great, and we put a whole bunch of ideas in Ted's head when we had him on the show on last Tuesday, so check that out if you haven't watched it. The follow-up that Ted is actually working on is called I Glory. He talks about this on that interview. Is actually called I Gloriana, about Elizabeth I, which is super interesting, actually. So I will be happy to take a look at that when the time comes. But if Ted or somebody wants to do a Caesar one, cool. I'm cool with that too. Ikusa. That was the other, like I don't know if it's currently available or not. I do have, and not on the list, but I do have the Wars of Marcus Aurelius, which is pretty cool. And I have Antony and Cleopatra 2, which is a 2-player game. Wars of Marcus Aurelius is a single-player game. So you're going to be surprised because it is on this list, actually. The tiny Caesar's War Mini from Decision. It's actually a pretty... I've got it. It's a pretty cool game. Tom MC, welcome back. And Mr. Brandt, thanks for stopping by. Now, while Brandt's here, I guess he's gonna pop in and say this anyway. Uh, the Armchair Dragoons, in collaboration with Beyond Solitaire, are running a Solitaire Wargaming survey, which I will throw a link to in the chat right now. So if you want to hop over that, and while you're listening, you can fill out the survey. It'll probably take the remaining hour and 23 minutes to do. I'm teasing, of course. It won't take that long. It will only take about 50. So yeah, so a couple of the games that have been mentioned here are games that we will be talking about tonight. I mean, I picked games that I have something to say about. I haven't played Stilicho, but this is a super interesting period, this very late Western Empire period. It's a very dynamic period militarily and politically, super duper interesting, and is worth a look. It sort of is, and you'll see it when you get to it. You'll recognize it. All right, so moving on from Stilicho. Next up is Caesar in Alexandria. Now this is, we'll circle back to Great Battles of History, as you can imagine. There's two Great Battles of History games on this list, and you can probably imagine what the other one is. This is Caesar in Alexandria. This is one of the games on GMT's. We're never going to reprint this list. This is unfortunate. Designers credited here on BGG are Richard Berg, Mark Herman, and Alan Ray. I think what that sounds like is and if Mark's here, he can say one way or the other. What this sounds like is a Berg Herman design, and Alan Ray was the developer, because Alan Ray was and we'll talk more about Mr. Ray here in a minute too. So the reason this is interesting, it's Caesar fighting in and around Alexandria in that time period. Okay, the reason this is interesting is that it is pretty unique in terms of Ancients wargaming, because it is an Ancients city fight where they're actually fighting block to block, and you can actually kind of replicate that at a slightly higher scale in this game. I haven't played it, but I have it, and it's pretty cool. So, and Brand says the survey doesn't take that long. I might be thinking of a different survey. You do need the BGG links from the war games you're listing, though, and I sympathize with Brant for doing that, because having had to deal with that particular problem. So Commando Solo 193 worked with Richard Berg on this game, and that's awesome also. But yeah, this is a very promising game. It's not like really all that well regarded as GBOH games go, but it's on an interesting and fairly unique topic that has not been covered elsewhere as far as I'm aware. I am not shocked by this for this exact reason, because, if you don't know, the deluxe edition, the relatively recent deluxe edition of Great Battles of Julius Caesar, included a lot of the supplementary material that had been done, including the entire contents of Caesar Conquest of Gaul and 2 of its 3 expansions, including the Julius Caesar expansions as well. So there's like a lot of stuff in it, as is pretty typical for new GBOH games from GMT, but they did not include this, and I think they didn't include it just because it would be like a whole separate game to include, where they could double up on some of the legions, for example, from between Caesar, the original Great Battles of Julius Caesar, the Civil Wars, and Caesar Conquest of Gaul. So they didn't need quite as many counters, where this you might need a lot more counters. And a new map. So I understand why they didn't include this, but it would have been nice had they included this, in my opinion. So now I'll also point out that there is also a Caesar at Alicia game in the GBOH series, which I also have and have also not played, and which is not as highly regarded as the old Avalon Hill Siege of Alesia game. Alesia is a fascinating subject. There's some debate about exactly where this was, by the way. So, all right, let's go get rid of the spammers. Jesus Christ. Hold on just a minute. There you go. That guy's blocked. Bye-bye. Anyway, The moderators of the channel unfortunately cannot see the Twitch people, nor can I ban anybody from YouTube. So that's on Twitch. I can ban YouTube people on YouTube, and I have to go over to Twitch to ban the Twitch people. So, and Wolfdog seems to follow the consensus here in that the Avalon Hill Elysia is pretty good. The GBOH one, not as much. And I'm prepared to believe that. So, excellent. Excellent. Two people checking the show out from the sunny Philippines. Thank you, John and Vlad. So, oops, that came out. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. All right, we're into the 709th now. So that does mean I've clipped 2 entire formations into 42 minutes that we've been going so far. But just taking this apart is going to take a while because this is a big formation. All right, and yeah, I've never really done the Asterisk and Obelix comics thing. This is a French comic that is sort of set in the ancient period, and they're Gauls basically, and have funny colored pants, which is kind of a Roman joke because the Gauls wore pants and the Romans did not. The Romans did not like pants, and they thought it was weird and barbarous if you wore pants. So a philosophy I can completely sympathize with at this time. So this is part of the Great Battles of History series, which I think the original idea was that it was going to like do all the great battles of history because they jumped forward from ancient Greece and Rome to doing Gustavus Adolphus. But the series pretty quickly evolved into a more or less ancients operation. Although when it starts to go outside of Europe, we start to defy those neat boundaries that we have in Europe, at least, where we have 2 games set in feudal Japan. We have 1 game set in the ancient Mesopotamia, 1 game set in ancient India, and those are really interesting games, by the way. So, all right. Well, yes, exactly. That didn't make sense. You're up where it was cold. You didn't have the sunny Mediterranean climate, right? I can tell you, Stigler, welcome back to the show. I can tell you in this case what the problem is. Danny did have a one of the proof copies, but he's been handing it around, letting people play it and take it to conventions and stuff. So that copy is probably fairly used at this point because it's been played at least three to five conventions. So Wade Moore, thanks for stopping by. We're 3 or 4 games into the list of ancient Roman warfare games so far, but I'll give you a shot of the city fight here, and I think this is really cool. You absolutely cannot see the freaking hexes in this picture. The actual map in person is not quite as bad. So I can understand this. Wear a back brace or hire a forklift driver is all I can say. So in any case, this is a pretty interesting game. And again, it's not one of the like classic GBOH games that everybody loves, but it is on a very interesting topic that doesn't get a lot of attention elsewhere. And Ancient City Fight, which you don't see a lot. Marker Zero, thanks for stopping by, which you don't see a lot elsewhere. Next up, somebody mentioned Lauren Wiseman's game Eagles, which had appeared from Game Designers Workshop. This is the second version of that. That was done by Avalon Hill, called Caesar's Legions. And it's funny that Mark should stop by because Mark was kind enough to send me his copy of Caesar's Legions. This is very interesting in that it actually kind of resembles to me SPI's Le Grande Armée in a way, in that it's kind of a scenario-based operational treatment of ancient warfare in much the same way that Le Grande Armée was a scenario-based operational treatment of some of Napoleon's campaigns, not all of them. There's a video that'll be out at some point about that actual topic, about the differences between the 2 different versions of Le Grande Armée. In any case, this is a very interesting looking game, and again, one does not see very many operational Ancients games. This is going to be Caesar romping around in Gaul and Germany, Do we have a shot of the entire map? That would be nice if we did. Kind of. So here you can kind of see the map. It's when did this come out from? Hold on, we're gonna look at versions here. 75 is gonna be okay. It's listed separately on BGG. That's great. So, poop. Oh, here we go. This looks like a scan of the map board, actually. So you can kind of see Gaul, the Low Countries. You can see the big river here is going to be the Rhine, with maybe not the greatest historical clarity here, but whatever. And then huge chunks of Germany. So that's kind of what you're going to see in this particular game, is Romans fighting up here. I should have actually reviewed the scenario list. Now, it's not just Caesar, though, right? The Teutoburger Wald is the German name of the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, and this was a pretty infamous battle, actually. So, Jonathan Dyer, thanks for stopping by. We'll see you when you hit the replay. It's all good. We are all good here. So I haven't had a chance to play this yet. Perfidious Albion played it in high school. You got to keep your legions intact. They're nearly invincible, but you need to rely on auxiliaries, as was the case historically, right? So there's like real legitimate historical insights in a game like this. Operational insights. I don't know what the game's treatment of supply and logistics looks like. I think you might be better served looking at a game like The Conquerors, or to go back to The Conquerors includes some Roman stuff, or the Fate of All from Thin Red Line, which was inspired at least by the Greek part of the Greco-Persian part of The Conquerors, and hopefully they will continue that series. That would be great. I like what Thin Red Line is doing in general, and if anybody wants to do Operational Ancients, I am delighted to hear about it. Let's see here. We've got a lot here. So yeah, and this was originally published by Game Designers Workshop. The original designer was Lauren Wiseman, and I think Don Greenwood's role is probably a developer role here. I don't know that that's how it's credited, but that's kind of what it smells like to me. I'm happy to be corrected on that. On Dacia. Woof. Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but that doesn't mean no. However, I am reasonably sure that there is a... Damn it, that's not on this list. I may last minute add to this list, because there's a really obvious ancient Roman keystone piece that I didn't think to include. All right, I think we're going to actually start clipping here because I am just about out of space. All right, but I'm not aware of anything about Dacia specifically. Moving on from Caesar in Alexandria. Let's move that there. We have Rome Inc. This is by designer Philip Jelly, and he is, in fact, not French. He is British. So this is a game that appeared in Against the Odds at the Solitaire game. I'm not really sure what the shtick is with the Inc., where you're supposed to be running Roman Empire, or the Roman Empire in this case, like a corporation. I don't feel like the game really does anything with that shtick. It's really kind of like a much lighter... I compared it to this once I thought about it. It's kind of like a much lighter Mr. President, except you're running the Roman Empire. Now, there are multiple sequels of this in the pipeline, including Rome LLC, which is the Roman Republican period, or at least part of it. And then there's a Rome Inc. 2, which, with the Roman numeral 2 in the ink, it's weird, but that's supposed to be coming as well. And that will take us post-Diocletian, which sounds also pretty interesting. So I do have this. This is one of those ones that, I got this game because of the CSRs, because I didn't really know anything about it. And then I looked at it to doing research for the CSRs for that year, and I'm like, yeah, I got to have this. This looks pretty cool. Jason W. mentions the Ancients game Epipoli, which is the first Ancients Levian campaign game. Levian campaign is an operational series, which is my bag, and that is available for pre-order on GMT's website right now. And I think it's worth a look. Let's put it that way. You have not missed either of these yet, actually. Not sure Alicia's on here, but Siege of Jerusalem totally is. I've come very close to getting Rome Inc. on a table multiple times, and it just hasn't happened yet. Right now, it's because the table's all cluttered with this fucking thing, mostly. Charles de Torres says that Camelot Games did a deluxe version of Caesar's Legions called Caesar in Gaul. I'd have to look at that. I don't know anything about that. If I didn't say it already, Rome Inc. here is a solitaire game, and it looks real solid. Brant, thanks for stopping by. So definitely worth a look. Up next is another Hollandspiel game. This is designed by Amabel Holland, and this is Aurelian, the Restorer of the World. Aurelian is a really important Roman emperor, even though he was not emperor for very long at all, because he was betrayed by, go figure, betrayed by his generals and killed. And it is maybe him that is responsible for getting the Roman Empire out of the crisis of the 3rd century. So super important person. If we take a look at, there's not a lot of pictures here. We take a look at the map. It's got a lot of similarities with the map for Stilicho and Wars of Marcus Aurelius. It's a point-to-point map. And again, it's a solitaire game. This is also something that is, in my judgment, worth your time. And I do have this one, right? Poop. I don't have this one. Well, it's more stuff to buy. How about that? So, one could, I think, William Aarons hits something really significant on the head in this comment. Roman factories. That was the thing. The Romans had actual factories for stuff like bricks and concrete and stuff like pottery and stuff like that. And not quite industrial revolution level of manufacturing here, but this was on the road to that. And if the empire had ended up being stable for much longer, we might have seen a much earlier industrial revolution. That'd be a pretty good alternate history plot, to be honest about it. Meandering Mike says Caesar in Gaul is hard to find. Noble Knight wants over 150 for it. That's got to be pretty obscure, though, to be honest about it. Hold on 1 second. All right, we got that taken care of. So, all right, moving on from Aurelian, we do have the mini Caesar's War from Decision Games. This is a Joe Miranda design. It is one of the Decision minis, so it is approximately the size of this notepad, like in the little Ziploc, and you fold the map out, and it's like it might be an 11 by 17 map, but it might also be 8.5 by 11. It's got a small number of counters. It's got like somewhere between 20 and 40 counters, and it's got a tiny, adorable deck of cards in it. This is a point-to-point card-driven game. This is not a detailed simulation by any means. This is true. This is true too. Let's not read too much into that either. There was. They were a slave economy, and labor was super duper cheap, so they did not have the industrial industry to really take advantage of that either. So there's that. This is a terrific little game, actually. I mean, you're not playing Case Blue here, right? You're not playing some massive simulation. You're playing a relatively small, here's the game, looks pretty good. The counters are fine. The cute little cards are fine. The production quality, it's a Ziploc game. What do you want? It's like $20 now. When I bought it, I think it was like 10 or 15. So it's a cute little game. There is a companion game of sorts called Belisarius's War that deals with Belisarius's reconquest of either Italy or North Africa. I'm not entirely sure. Probably North Africa. But this is a cute little game, and as far as I'm aware, it's still available. Let's actually take a quick look and see if Noble Knight wants $15 for it, which sounds about right to me. So, We're not talking about the GMT one though. He's talking about one from Conquest Games, Camelot Games, something like that. Well, this is not. Yeah, if Philip Jelly wants to do this, I'll take a look at this too. That's another topic that's not really talked about enough, I think, in wargaming circles is the history of East Asia, and this would be one step in the direction of correcting that. So, all right. So moving on from Caesar's War is Richard Berg's Pax Romana. I've got this. I've played this. It's a pretty good game. I think it's a little noodlier than it needs to be. This is one of those games where Richard Berg did not any longer have the support of the SPI infrastructure, and he sometimes got even. In fairness, he it got lost at least once in the design with SPI too, and that would be Campaign for North Africa. And I think this is a little over-designed, but it's not over-designed to a degree that makes me super unhappy or unwilling to play it. This is a pretty cool game. Probably the clunkiest part in it is the way the losses work, because they're basically percentage losses off a stack of strength points. So you got to figure out what, I've got 16 or 17 strength points and I've just lost 18% or whatever it is. I got to figure out how many strength points that is. There's a chart in the game to help you with that. So Alistair says that Decision still has Caesar's War and Belisarius' War in stock, which is great. They might even go on sale. They put the minis and the folios on sale relatively frequently. Okay, John Stanley, once again, thanks so much for the support. Is the Roman Empire best thought of as a military powerhouse or high-quality mover of foodstuffs? This is a good question, and I think one has to take stock of the context in which the Roman Empire and Republic operated, right? You have a situation to the east of them where you had a conqueror roll through, conquers a bunch of shit, and then dies in his 20s, and leaves behind a bunch of squabbling mini empires that continue to fight for a considerable amount of time. And that's, of course, the War of Alexander's successors. And then to the west, you have a variety of groups that are, I don't want to necessarily say not as advanced as the Romans, because I think that's a can of worms that I am not ready to explore tonight. But the so-called barbarians on the Roman frontier were definitely less organized than the Romans were. And that makes a huge factor. The Romans could bring out this huge army, this huge professional, or at least quasi-professional army, because there were always a lot of auxiliaries, army, and whereas the Germans, for example, or the Gauls would basically be these like tribal bands that included not just the people that would fight, but the old people and the women and the children as well. So Phil Hatfield, thanks for stopping by. $30, Eric Goebel, for Pax Romana, I think is a pretty good price. There are a couple different editions of this. The later printing from GMT does have a mounted map, and that's actually the one I have. Mounted map in a 2-inch box with All right, so we'll get this fixed, folks. Give me a second here. That was a full computer crash, by the way. So that was not anybody. This is a very good book, by the way. Lest Darkness Fall by Elsbreg de Camp, set in sort of 2nd, 3rd century, 4th century, 5th century, maybe about 5th century. Sounds right. Ancient Rome itself. It's actually a pretty cool book. All right, so we're back. We're back in business here, folks. Sorry about that. I am giving serious consideration to running the stream off the laptop, to be completely honest, or figuring something else out when I move my office. But I'm reluctant to make like production type changes before I make the office move. So apparently, so hopefully everybody is. Yeah, it's not bad for. This is why I've got all SSDs in addition to the 18 or whatever it is terabytes hard drive. Anyway, Pax Romana, pretty good game. 7.4 on BGG is not a startlingly awesome score, but it ain't too bad. I think the skirt game deserves more attention than it gets nowadays. We might see sort of Ray Farrell's sort of Rome on here later as well. I'll talk about that in a minute because that I haven't played. Hannibal Rome versus Carthage by Mark Simonich. Pictured here is the updated one from Phalanx, which some people have called overdone. I don't know that I agree with that, but it is a good game, a solid game about the Second Punic War. And if you get one of the later versions, Hannibal and Hamilcar or something like that, it has the First Punic War in it as well. I think that's, for obvious reasons, I think it's a little less interesting, but I'm gonna make my own exception pretty soon as well. So, given the current fiasco around the Intel 13th gen processors, guess what I got? Yeah, I would consider that. So, Mark, thanks for stepping by. All right, so Hannibal Rome versus Carthage. I have played this. It is a point-to-point card-driven game. I played the Avalon Hill version. Here's the very fancy picture of the Phalanx version, I imagine. And it's real nice. The Avalon Hill one does not look this nice. There are also, in the Phalanx one, I think there's a couple of miniatures for leaders and stuff like that as well. So, were I like trying to obtain this nowadays, I would almost certainly be going for the Phalanx version, except that I'm not really buying stuff from Phalanx, not because I'm on a boycott, it's just that, you know, a lot of the stuff that they have is stuff like this, which I would buy, but if I'm going to buy it, I might as well run down the old Avalon Hill version, right? So, but solid game. There's also sort of a separate card-driven combat mini game in here, as I recall, that some people didn't like, but I did not mind it. I got my ass handed to me last time I played this. So, but pretty good game. Again, Second Punic War in this particular case. We're probably gonna, the list is gonna end up probably being slanted toward early topics because that's where my interest is. So, Alienware is now owned by Dell. And you can still get Alienware, but you're basically buying a Dell with a fancy logo that's about $1,000 extra. Somebody also mentioned Republic of Rome earlier. This is one of the two games on this list that I think we could have an argument about whether it's a war game or not. There's war in it. It is one of those oddball games that is both collaborative to some degree, but ultimately competitive, in that you are trying to not screw the Roman Republic up, but okay, you're also going to win on your own, right? This is an extremely political game. The war game element, the military elements of this are relatively rudimentary. I do not mean that in a disparaging way. It is the right way to handle it for this particular thing. Now, there was a Valley Games version, which is the one... Let me pull up versions here. There's a Valley Games version that's the one that was pictured here. And then the Avalon Hill edition, which is the one I have and had and have played. I got rid of it in a trade at one point, and I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, exactly. Unless you just don't like money and you hate money and you don't want it. So that's cool. Now here's the deal with um, Republic of Rome. It's a lot like, I was going to say diplomacy, and I guess that's true, but it's a lot like diplomacy in this regard, where it is fundamentally a multiplayer game, and it is way, 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 way less engaging if you are playing it with like 2 or 3 people. This thing works best at 4 to 6 players. And it even says that on BGG. Five, I think it accommodates 6. I would want to play it with 6 wherever possible. It is a much better game with additional people. Unlike, well, I should say, like a lot of Avalon Hill's other games from this rough period, this also came out. I always second guess myself when I look at the date on this, 1990. This seems very late to me. I could have sworn it was out earlier than that. It is very much a Who's Your Neighbor game, Commando Solo. It is somewhat like diplomacy, but in that sense, but there's a lot more mechanically going on. You're allowed to bribe people and stuff like that. The money flows around a great deal. It's a really cool game. You're actually encouraged to stand up and give speeches before the votes in the Senate. It's pretty cool. Good luck. I mean, I guess you could solitaire this. I don't know what this number is intended to convey. I mean, good luck, and if anybody wants to play this solitaire, let me know how it goes. But I strongly feel like this is a multiplayer game, and you really need multiplayer to make it sing the way it should. No, Avalon Hill would produce games for another 8 years after this. 1998 was when they sold out to Hasbro for a bag of bullshit. So it's late Avalon Hill, but it's not one of their last games. There's 50 games that came out after. I don't know about 50, but there's dozens of games that came out after this. Let me put it that way. Exactly. Yeah, I don't understand where they're coming from on that. Community 4 to 6. 4 to 6 is right. 5 to 6 is better. To be frank, it's also, even the Avalon Hill version is a fairly decent looking game. They had it by that point improved their production quality somewhat, at least on like the cards and stuff like that. These cards aren't like those awful old style Avalon Hill cards. I mean, I guess you could. But yeah, this is another one of those things where you could make it work, but you'd be missing so much of the experience by solitairing this. So, yet I think it's not worth your time. Now, sort of another in the sort of vague family, thematically at least, but not mechanically, as Pax Romana and Sword of Rome, is this game, Ray Farrell's Time of Crisis. Now, he's the designer of Sword of Rome as well, which we'll get to in a minute or two. This is very much a Euro-style game, in my opinion. That does not mean it isn't a war game. It is, but it's got Euro mechanics, and in this particular case, I was not crazy about it. To me, it felt like the deck building element, if I'm getting that right, felt very dominant. So, by all means, I'm all ears. If you can make this work, and if so, how you made it work, let me know. I'd be very interested to see that. So in any case, this is the crisis of the 3rd century. So this is a period in which there's a lot of different claimants to who the emperor is. There are significant external threats to the Romans at this point, the most serious of which is, as it always was, the Persian Empire. And a number of catastrophic errors were made. I believe it may have also been in this period where the office of emperor was actually sold to the highest bidder by the Praetorian Guard. Or was that the year of the 4 emperors? It could have been both, for all I know. I liked the idea of Time of Crisis 2, and this is a popular game. It's pretty well regarded. It's a GMT game. Ray Farrell knows what he's doing. You can kind of get a sense here. I think there's something to like here, right? It just didn't sing to me in particular. Moving along, we have the coin, or I guess I'll say one of the two Roman-era coin games, Falling Sky. This is, by quite a bit, the more accessible of the two, but also by quite a bit, not my favorite of the two. The other one is Pendragon, dealing with post-Roman Britain, and you may or may not, I didn't put it on this list, you may or may not consider that to be an ancient Rome game, but there's some Roman stuff in it, right, in Britain in that period. That I like it a lot better than Falling Sky. Falling Sky is basically Caesar's campaigns in Gaul, but Falling Sky is pretty good too. It's got some pretty interesting dynamics in that there is sort of an NPC faction that are the Germans that can basically be controlled by somebody on the board during brief periods. It's actually pretty cool. Trying to remember exactly what the time period was, because this period is not 3rd century, as I recall. I have heard good things about the expansion as well. If you and in fact, I think if you pre-order this through GMT, this is still on P500. I think the next edition will include the expansion as well. So this is a reprint of this is on P500. And Eric Schaefer clarifies 195 CE. That's actually one of the things that kicks off the Crisis of the 3rd Century, though. I think I said this, right? Maybe I missaid this. But yeah, this is Gaul against Caesar. But there is a German tribe that lives on the other side of the Rhine that can come in and do stuff. It is not set in Germany. It is set in Gaul. I've heard good things about Mare Nostrum, but I refuse to feature it in one of these countdown lists because there are 75 different games called Mare Nostrum, and I am tired of having to figure out which one it is that I am talking about at any given time. Now, yes, that is me being slightly pissy. Well, they did come out pretty far apart. This was 2016, and Caesar versus Gaul, which is a Mark Simonich game based on the Caesar Hannibal Rome versus Carthage system. I want to say that came out in like 2022, so there's several years between them, so I don't think they directly competed against each other, but you can certainly make an interesting contrast between the two games. This is very much a new style treatment of this topic, where Caesar versus Gaul, the Mark Simonich title, is a much more traditional wargame approach, but it's not like it's just Hex and Counter either, right? It's a point-to-point card-driven game. So they're neither of them are, if you're like really religious about the Hex and Counter thing, you're probably going to be disappointed. I actually almost missed this because of the technical snafu that we just had. So let's take a quick break. We're also not particularly behind on the chat, which is novel. So let's take a quick break and hear from our good friends at Noble Knight, the official sponsor of the Counter Clipping Show.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more, going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at, complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
Once again, thank you, Noble Knight, and don't forget the affiliate link in the video description, as well as all the other ways to support the channel in the video description. So, moving to grab this, I could be wrong about this, but I believe Andrew Runke is Volko's son. I might be mistaken about that. So, Ardwulf's Lair is located in the gaming Valhalla that is otherwise known as Ohio. So, in any case, I'm glad I got this when I did. Let me put it that way, because I might not even have attempted it at a price like that. But when I set that up in the first place, there wasn't a copy at Noble Knight, so they keep selling them at the prices they put on them. Every time it goes up, why would they stop doing that? As long as they keep selling them. So, all right, so moving along. Julius Caesar. This is a game by Justin Thompson, co-designed by Grant Dalglish. I'm not sure what the design relationship was on this, but we have had Grant on a couple of times, not talking about this specifically, but we've also had an interview with Justin Thompson, so go check that out if you're interested. This is a classic Columbia-style block game set in this exact period. It's the Roman Civil War between... well, there's no triumvirate left at this point. It's pretty much Caesar and Pompey. This is a very good game. It's pretty well regarded on BGG, which doesn't mean a thing. And this, I think, was the updated edition of it. So this has somewhat fancier components than the original one did. If you buy this now, it'll have a fully mounted map, I believe. Where the older version of the game from Columbia had that sort of cardstock map that I've never talked to anybody that actually likes that kind of map. So, yeah, this is essentially accurate. So, yes, this is true. There's also a Steam version of this as well as Richard III and maybe Hammer of the Scots, something like that. These are classic Columbia Games block war games where, in this case, it's a point-to-point map. Some of them do have hex maps. In this case, there's... Am I remembering? No, I'm thinking of Rommel in the Desert. There's like a supply card mechanic in Rommel in the Desert, too. That doesn't happen here, but there are cards here. And they're pretty cool, flavorful cards, too, where like the gods intervene and stuff like that. It's pretty neat. The shtick behind the Columbia block games model is basically that you put stickers on the blocks, or sometimes they're embossed if your game is exceptionally fancy, and you can see the side with the info on it, and your opponent cannot. I'm about to sneeze, so we're gonna mute ourselves here if that looks like it's actually going to happen. And as Tom MC points out, it is on Rally the Troops. So. David has intermittently grew a beard. Don't worry about this. We'll be talking to David again fairly soon. Let me put it. I'm not giving you a date yet, but I will. Yes, unfortunately, the blimp doesn't live here anymore. So there's that. I guess, but Columbia did, in the first original block game, Quebec 1859 or 1759 or whatever, whenever that happened. Even there, Columbia is evolving the model a lot from where it is in Stratego. So this is okay, but it's I think unfair to the Columbia block games to just say, well, they're just Stratego. And as Meandering Mike points out, there's this Latac game that did the idea before Stratego as well. So, I mean, bear in mind, Alistair, that's this month, okay? Who knows what David will be bringing to us next month? Yes, I don't know about all of them, but this is absolutely true in the latest version of Napoleon as well. They're much better. They're larger and sturdier blocks than GMT uses. That's not a serious critique of what GMT's doing. Their blocks are perfectly fine. But hey, bigger's better. I'm clumsy, right? So, great game, Julius Caesar. The block game. And here's Ray Farrell's Sword of Rome. This is, once again, a point-to-point card-driven game. This resembles, not just because of the map, the rules aren't as close as that might imply, but this will definitely remind you of Pax Romana, right? I think this is a little easier to play. However, this is another one of those games that I think is not really going to play all that as well as it might otherwise if you had the maximum number of people. There was an expansion for this that added a 5th player. Out of the original box, you were able to do, I think, 2 to 4. And the expansion added the 5th player, and then the subsequent printing from GMT included the 5th player expansion. And it's one of those deals where each faction has their own deck to draw cards from. I haven't played this. It's got a very good reputation. I don't know what the rating here on BGG is, 7.3. 139 on the War Games list. That's not bad. Cool cover, too. Cool Ron McGowan cover. But solid game. as far as I can tell. Popular base system invented by Mark Herman. We're talking about the CDG mechanism there, and featured in Ted Racer's Paths of Glory. Don't draw too much from that. There's the way I see it, Paths of Glory has a specific incarnation of the classic Mark Herman card-driven mechanic, okay? And while Sword of Rome uses the classic Mark Herman card-driven game mechanic, it does not use the specific implementation that Paths of Glory does. I'm going to pop an antacid here because I've just been hit with a significant wave of heartburn. So pardon my chewing. All right. Well, we'll touch on this too. This covers a longer period. You look at this period, 362 to 272 BC. This covers, well, technically it doesn't. Then Rise of the Roman Republic. But yeah, there's some overlap here. And that's a pretty different game, but we'll get to that. Now, here's our second and the obvious pick from the Great Battles of History series. This is SPQR. Pictured here is the deluxe edition. Now, there are multiple deluxe editions, let's put it that way. If we were to go back to the original SPQR, it's going to look like this. It's going to be in a 2-inch box with 4 or 5 battles in it. This version has 1 million battles in it. This is not even updated because if you buy the current version of this from GMT, it also includes all this, but it also includes the Barbarian expansion, which has another like 10 or 12 battles or something like that in it. So, I mean, the blimp visits occasionally. It just does not live here anymore. I don't know. I haven't really had that much whiskey, to be honest about it. Let's fix that. Good whiskey, though. Much better than the antacid. This is true. I think this varies by when they made the game, right? I've got the latest edition of Napoleon, and the blocks in there are almost twice as big as the small GMT blocks out of their block games. So, all right. So SPQR. This is one of those super duper high value packages that GMT seems to want to do right now, and I am all for it. So you buy this and you get, I don't know, 20 plus different battles, not all of which are equally interesting or competitive, don't get me wrong, but you're getting a lot of content here. The system, by its very nature, allows you to explore a lot of the way different tactics and different doctrines and different weapon systems interacted in ancient warfare. I really strongly like this series, and in particular, this and Great Battles of Alexander and some of the other really big ones that they've done. As far as I am concerned, specific engagements aside, where we might look at something like Elysia or something like that, where it is an unusual battle, I feel like GBOH, Great Battles of History, is basically the final word in Ancients tactical stuff. So I did not actually, Mike, it wouldn't put past me if you actually busted out the ruler to find out. I did not measure the blocks, however. I have actually already mentioned, Steve-O, welcome back to the show. I actually already mentioned this at the beginning of the show. I don't have that to talk about today. But since we're talking about it, you will see an unboxing of this game on Thursday. The video is already uploaded. Unfortunately not. And this book is supposed to be really good too. I actually have this digitally, and it is on my list of history books to read. I read so much history stuff for like most of the last 10 years that I'm kind of enjoying reading not history stuff right now. So we'll see how long that lasts. I can't stay away from it completely. So, or as was often the case, yes. I've got a fair number of spares as well. I actually bought some blocks and stuff from GMT at WBC where they were selling them pretty cheap. Like extra block sets from various games. So SPQR is highly recommended, but if you want to get it, I would strongly recommend getting the new version. I actually saw this getting played at Origins on a giant 3D arena, or Circus Maximus, as the case may be, this year. This is the classic Circus Maximus from Avalon Hill. This was Battleline originally? I'm not sure I knew that. Oh, look at that. There's an English... Here's the English version, or the Battleline version of Circus Maximus. I don't think I realized that originally came out of Battleline. Mike Matheny was the designer. Don Greenwood probably did the extra development at Avalon Hill. This is a classic. A lot of people have fun with this. That said, it is kind of complicated, and that's why if you see something modern like GMT's Charioteer, it's going to be a much simpler game than this. This is a bit simmy, if you know what I mean. But if you're into recreating the chariot race from Ben-Hur, for example, which is the best part of the movie, then you're going to probably have a lot of fun with this. John Longshore, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, that does not sound fun at all. Do you like movies about gladiators, Jimmy? So yeah, Carol mentions Circus Minimus. So the criticism I just said, where kind of this beer and pretzels game is maybe a little more complicated than it needs to be. Circus Minimus was Dean Essig's answer to that very question. And last I seem to keep seeing that available from MMP again. I don't know if it's out of print or what. But it never seems to 100% go away. I see it relatively regularly. Circus Minimus, that is. It's in a Ziploc. I picked this up a couple years... I actually was given this a couple of years ago in that bequeathal situation that we've talked about before. And it's a pretty neat game. So, John, we are drinking your stuff tonight. So, the whole show's in your honor. Mayor Pingree approves here. So, thank you, John Longshore. Yes. This totally works out, right? This is a neat game. So, Circus Minimus is actually pretty neat. Does that count by BGG standards as a re-implementation? It might. No, it doesn't, but BGG is not consistent about that, so there's that. This is what the map looks like. It's a pretty boring looking map, to be honest about it, but back in the day, we had to walk uphill to school both ways in the snow and no shoes. So, this is great at the time. But classic game, well beloved for good reasons. Next up is the game that was mentioned earlier, Mark Simonich's Caesar Rome versus Gaul. And now we could take a look at this, and you will probably see that there's the map feels a lot more sort of busy and congested than and I don't mean in terms just of appearance. It feels, without counting them, it feels like there's a lot more available spaces on this board than there was on Hannibal Rome versus Carthage. This is otherwise supposed to be quite good. I have no reason to assume that it is not any good. Mark Simonich is a very good designer, one of the best working in the hobby today, and this is a re-implementation of a classic game system. That said, I haven't played it and don't own it. So... there will be an update kit too, yeah, but we'll see. This is, Mike Reed says that Circus Minimus is best with the right crowd. Played it at the Hut in Homer one year. R.I.P. Dean, indeed to the R.I.P. Dean. All games are best with the right crowd, to be honest about it. Some games have a broader appeal inside the crowd that you have available to you than others, but all games are best with the right crowd. That is universally true. Well, this is probably true, but they're not really doing this quite the same thing either, are they? So, to be fair. Also mentioned earlier was Fred Schachter's Siege of Jerusalem from Avalon Hill. This was a pickup from somebody else too, as I recall. And of course, Historical Perspectives, actually, who I think did 2 editions. Maybe not. I don't know. At least... All right, I'm not clear about the edition sequencing here, because I only see 2 different ones, unless this is a re-implementation, which it is not. In any case, this is the one that people remember, right? The Siege of Jerusalem, 70 A.D. So what's going on here is we're kind of in and around the year of the 4 emperors, where... there are significant problems that the Roman state manages to extract itself from. But the guy they send down here to deal with this situation, this is I'll mention this in the video too. And I'm not qualified to talk about parts of this because this is one of the situations that kicks off the Jewish diaspora. So Nero makes the residents of Judea very, very unhappy because Nero wants to put a statue of himself in the temple in Jerusalem. And no, the people down there will not stand for this, and they didn't. So this created a giant fucking mess for the Romans that persisted for several years. They send Vespasian down here to take care of it, but then the year of the four emperors happens, and Vespasian gets back on the boat and goes back to Rome and leaves his son down here in charge, as I recall. But in any case, the city falls and is basically sacked in 70 A.D., and this begins one of the several Jewish diasporas. What's the plural of diaspora? Diasporae? Maybe, I don't know. In any case, SPS the Conquerors is actually pretty fascinating looking game. I'd love to get the rest of it. Ken, thanks so much. Anyway, okay. Well, this is not listed. Evo, thank you for this information. This is not listed on Board Game Geek. How about that? So, this is a classic. It's a pretty big game too. You can see it's a double-sized map. This is lots of us remember Avalon. One of the things we remember about Avalon Hill is the fact that almost all their games had mounted maps. This is one of the relatively infrequent games that did not have a mounted map. It had 2 unmounted maps. There were some others as well, off the top of my head. Advanced Third Reich and Rising Sun had unmounted maps, and of course the GCACW games that were published by Avalon Hill also had unmounted maps. This is a pretty good looking map. I think we have to agree. This was in the flat box. I don't know who did the map art here. It could have been Charlie Kibler. And in fact, looking at it, I don't see anything that jumps out to me that says this is not Charlie Kibler art. So it could be either way on that particular question. So yeah, it's a very well regarded game. Now, this has also been a pretty popular topic for wargamers, though, right? We've got Storm over Jerusalem from MMP now. We've got the new Siege of Jerusalem game from Decision, which is, it's a magazine game. It's not going to be this big. But this has been a pretty perennially popular topic for wargamers. And I wouldn't necessarily think that would be the case. So, didn't Bruno Senegalio have something to do with the development on this as well? Am I misremembering that? Well, Noble Knight has one for $3. That doesn't sound right. Yeah, okay. 75 to 90. That's not bad. I don't think that's bad. Unpunched, $90. That's not bad. The $3 one is the general. So that's just BGG screwing that up. But yeah, this is. It's not super duper easy to get, but it's not obscenely rare or expensive. Joe Faust, thanks for stopping by. 4K restoration of Lawrence of Arabia. That sounds kind of awesome, actually. Just the opportunity to see that in the theater. I'm pretty sure there was a game about Masada, but I'm not picturing it clearly in my head at the moment. I am reasonably sure there was. I remember the mini-series on Masada that was done in the late 70s or early 80s. Early 80s sounds right. With Peter O'Toole and I can't remember who else might have been in it. So I have not really particularly seriously looked at the Spartacus game from Compass. I will tell you that there is an expansion in an issue of C3I called Great Battles of Spartacus that brings Spartacus in and a third Servile War into GBOH. To me, that's a little bit more interesting. Caesar in Elysia is not... No, it actually hasn't. Believe it or not. It really deserves a mention because it is of the 2 games I'm aware of, 2 good-sized games, full-size games anyway, that I'm aware of on that topic. It's the better regarded of the 2 by a considerable margin. So I did mention it, I just didn't have a card for it, I guess. I mean, they cover this in the miniseries, too. I remember this. So, I would be curious to see that, too. This is like some old There's like some old made-for-TV miniseries that might be interesting nowadays to watch. Maybe only for the cheese value. I don't know that Masada felt particularly cheesy to me at the time, but like North and South, that felt cheesy. On the other hand, and I don't remember which North and South miniseries it was, because there were at least two of them and maybe three. There was an episode in which John Brown was played by Johnny Cash, which is an interesting piece of casting. I think we can all agree. So, some of this stuff is on YouTube some of the time, I will tell you that. So, I, of course, do not approve of any kind of extra legal activities. All right. Moving on. We're close to being done here. Although we've got about 23 minutes left in the show. It's that timing-wise, it's actually going to work out quite correctly. Now, the important thing here is, if Justagard is here, he will agree with me on this. You might look at this and say, well, this is Byzantine history, the Byzantine Empire. But the Byzantine Empire was not just the Eastern Roman Empire. It was the Roman Empire. The Byzantines, the people, never called themselves Byzantines. The British called them that centuries later. They called themselves Romans, and their empire, they called the Roman Empire, Romania. That's where the name Romania comes from today. So to me, at least when we start talking about the relatively early period Byzantines, which this covers, prior to like the year 1000, or prior to Fourth Crusade, really is what I would say is the period. It's really the Roman Empire still, right? They just lost all the Western stuff that they didn't really want and wasn't making any money anyway. So I think this totally counts. Now, I'll also point out that Richard Borg disagrees with me on this, by the way, because his initial release for Commands and Colors Medieval is, in fact, all Byzantine battles, which I on the one hand, applaud that he's covering that, and on the other hand, I feel like there were more interesting Byzantine battles that he could have picked. So there's that. Belisarius does count. Absolutely. That's so Belisarius is the general appointed by Justinian to get a variety of things done, including quell the Nika riots and reconquer the Western Roman Empire. So, Belisarius 100% counts. Cataphract here is, I was wrong, by the way, when I said there's only 2 GBOH games on the list. Turns out there's 3. This is the third of the 3, Cataphract. And this is a pretty interesting game for a couple of reasons. One, it covers an interesting period that isn't often covered elsewhere. 2, it includes an entire complete campaign-level game called Justinian that is in the box, which is is there a picture of it? Which is a point-to-point game. I think for some, this is annoying. Board Game Geek lists this game separately. I'm wrong, it's an area map. Lists this game separately from Cataphract. I'm unaware that this was ever available separately. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So, I forget who I was playing. at this. Oh, here we go. Jeff Beeler has found one. Epic Masada, Epic Last Stand in the Desert. Kind of a plateau in the middle of the desert, but okay. Donald Belisario, I think. That's probably the guy you're thinking of. Well, there are more, but this isn't a GBOH list. This is an Ancient Roman list. And while I could have thrown a couple more in here, I didn't want this to be a GBOH list exclusively. I picked 3 GBOH games that are reflective of the system and reflective of different aspects or periods of Roman history. That's why I picked the ones that I did. This dude has been around literally forever. There's a really interesting primary source, by the way, on the Byzantine period and on Justinian and Belisarius specifically. There are multiple books with this title. But what you would be looking for is a book called The Secret History by Procopius. One of the better regarded translations of which was actually translated by my Byzantine history professor. So it was, well, let's let him know exactly how much we pay attention to staying on topic here. Anyway, so this campaign game, which I have not played, looks pretty... Actually, I haven't played any of the battles either, but the battle selection is pretty cool, too. If we look at this, it doesn't... it's not on the friggin' thing, and there's no picture of the back of the box here either. But let's go back to Cataphract, and maybe there's one here. Here's the list of stuff. I'm not going to go pull it off the shelf. But you're going to... There's going to be a bunch of scenarios in here. Let me put it that way. There tends to be. So, the Ardwulf theme was actually pretty cool, I have to admit. The show was not that great, but at least past the first couple episodes. All right, so moving on. And as you can see, we've got some naval stuff going on in here, too. All right. Next up is, and second to last, is Carthage, the First Punic War by Richard Berg. And he's not listed here, but I am reasonably sure that Alan Ray was the developer on this game. So this is my personal favorite ancient operational Roman game series, okay? The series is called The Ancient World. The first game is Rise of the Roman Republic. The second game is this one, Carthage, the First Punic War. And I picked this one because I didn't want to talk... I didn't want to have a slide for both of them. But I think this is what most people are going to say is the most interesting one of the two. Because the first one is there's a couple of different things handled in the first volume, but the centerpiece of the box is the Samnite Wars, which is where the overlap happens with sort of Rome. Oh, very good. Very good. Yeah, no, this is not terribly controversial nowadays. It's just like not how we think, because a lot of older historiography just said, oh, these are the Byzantines. They're a totally separate thing. Because they weren't Romans, because they weren't Rome, but they were Romans, because that was the Roman Empire. Anyway, so Carthage, the First Punic War is volume 2 in the series, and it is what it says on the box. It's the First Punic War. This is not the interesting Punic War with Hannibal and the elephants and all that stuff. So everybody for years, decades, in fact, since this is 2005, so this is close to 20 years old at this point. We've been waiting all that time for Volume 3 Thunderbolt, which is now on GMT's P500, and we are probably going to see it. I'm guessing, this is not official, but my best guess is we will see it in Q1 to Q2 of 2025. I'd love to say I think we'll see it this year. I'm not sure that's going to happen given where it is in the production queue, but I do think we'll see it next year sometime. And I will whine incessantly if we don't see it by end of Q2. Exactly. This is a great series. Like a lot of Berg stuff, you might look at it and play it and say this is a little over designed, and there's some truth to that, as is almost always the case. With Berg designs, not always, but often the case. Certainly Berg, excuse me, Berg from this period had a tendency toward over-design. I think that's a fair statement. Nevertheless, I think this is a marvelous game system, a marvelous game series. It does some really interesting things to simulate the Roman political system and the Carthaginian political system, and I thought that was really awesome. So this is another one where I wouldn't have thought the release date was this late, but whatever. So great game, and I can't wait for Thunderbolt to show up. When it does show up, there will be content on it. You may rest assured. I left Press Dogs off because I don't think Press Dogs is any good by modern standards. I think Press Dogs today feels incredibly primitive. There was SPI stuff that tempted me, like the Conquerors, which is only half Romans, is why I didn't include that, or things like Fall of Rome or the S&T Punic Wars, for example. I think those are more worthwhile games than Press Dogs is at this point. I don't find Press Dogs particularly intriguing. Also, it's not all Roman stuff, so there's that. Centurion was, but... All right, and then lastly, we have the game that you might have suspected might have ended up on here, Imperium Romanum. Now, there's 3 editions of this game. The previous 2 were released by West End Games, and it might be true to say that those 2 games from West End Games are certainly among the best regarded war games that West End did. Probably the best regarded would have been Air and Armor, and or the tank leader games. I think that's probably about right. But Imperium Romanum 2 was very highly regarded. Now this is one of those. If you want an in-depth analysis of this game, I suggest going to watch Gilbert Collins talk about it. And he quite correctly identifies what makes a lot of people bounce off this, which is that it's not a very... You know how I'll say that this game feels very simmy, okay? Where it's got like a lot of simulation detail in it. This is almost the exact opposite of that from the perspective of how much game is in the box. There's a lot of game in the box. There's like 80 scenarios in this thing, in the 3rd edition from Decision. However, it is a very scholarly game, right? You're really delving fairly deeply into not so much the Roman political system, but the Roman economic base and transportation base and logistics base and stuff like that. And there's quite a lot of paperwork, and a lot of people don't like paperwork. But there are scenarios in here taking us clear from, the Marian reforms clear to the fall of the Roman Empire, and including a lot of the stuff in the East as well. There's like a lot of really good stuff here. We didn't miss that. I didn't include it because it is not very well regarded. Let me put it that way. Roma Victrix, I am looking forward to this. I was not super into this when I heard about it, and then I saw it on a table at Compass Expo, what I believe to have been one of the proof copies, actually. And talking to the people that were playing it there, it sounds fairly interesting. I may be giving Roma Victrix another look whenever it comes out. So, I can't cover everything in these things, right? I mean, there's several thousand Roman games. Even just covering the Wargaming ones did not take me all that deep into that list. I imagine Pandemic Rome is fun, but I didn't pay a ton of attention to it. There is Trajan from Decision Games. There's some kind of weird thing going on with that. I didn't put this on that list, although I could pull it off the shelf because I picked this up at Origins, actually. So there's a game called Trajan Ancient Wars that is a compilation of 4 different S&T magazine games that are all notionally linkable. I'm not sure how much support there is for that, but I can tell you that the maps don't quite line up perfectly based on what you get in the box if you buy the boxed version that has all 4 things. I think there's an everything Cthulhu, right? Cthulhu is more or less public domain now, as long as you're careful about it, so anybody can put Cthulhu in their game. So, I don't agree with... Craig, welcome to the show, and thanks for the comment. I don't agree with you on this, though. Easier to teach. I mean, the rule book is more succinct. That's definitely true. But I don't really think they changed very much between Imperium Romanum 2 and this game, which is just... On the box, it's called Al Nofi's Imperium Romanum. I tend to call it Imperium Romanum 3. They did make some handling changes in terms of how the units were represented. The Imperium Romanum 2 had a complete unit set for each faction, like a color. So there's like different colors for the pieces, okay? But the game covers 500 or 600 years of history, maybe more than that, maybe 800 or 900 years of history. So it's not really possible to say red is Julius Caesar, for example. So what color is who depends on the scenario you're playing, okay? The previous edition of the game, Imperium Romanum 2 anyway, had different colored countermix for each faction. This version has generic unit counters. There's like a couple different art variants on each counter, so you can kind of tell them apart. But you kind of need to move them around to the leader so you know whose stack that is, which you didn't have to do with the old one. You could just move the red counters if you were the red person. So, I've talked to Steve. I've talked about this before. This is a pretty interesting game. The ancient-inspired maps are indeed very interesting. I didn't. Decision still has this, so if people are charging a lot of money for it, I'm not sure where they're having the cheek to do that. Let's see here. We'll go with this one. We have done our 3 full formations here tonight, folks. So that is fantastic. And now I got to fit it all into a GMT tray for now, and then it's eventually going to go into baggies because I'm storing this thing in baggies. I almost used a profanity there that I shouldn't use. Anyway, so this is true. This is true. This is a really fascinating game, though. It's a very unique experience. The game I want to compare this to more than anything else is actually Pacific War. Not particularly because it resembles Pacific War in any important way, but like Pacific War, it is a unique treatment of its topic and sort of a magisterial level treatment of its topic, right? There's just a lot of great history in here. I think a lot of wargamers are probably might look at this and say, man, this is super, super dry. And they're not really wrong. It's the kind of game that is going to seem like it's really dry to a lot of people because of the paperwork and some other factors. But that said, it is, once again, it's unique. There's really nothing else that's doing what Imperium Romanum does, regardless of which specific edition you happen to like. I think that's a little bit less important. I would avoid the first edition if you can, but the second edition is perfectly viable. It's just not as pretty as this one. So there is a Euro called Trajan. We did not include it on our list today. Okay. Since that was off the reservation, as it were. I don't have any understanding of what that's about either. So, it's not like I left it off just to be mean because I hate Euros. I, in part, leave that kind of stuff off because I don't have any idea what it's about. It's probably about wheat trading or something like that, which is really just not my thing. So, E4 Airman, thanks so much. Have a good one. We'll see everybody next time. But we've still got about 5 minutes here. So let's talk about what's in the pipeline for the channel. So there's an announcement that I'm going to make at some point soonish, but I'm in no immediate danger of making it. Maybe next week, we'll see. That's got to do with just future content. I'm always super cagey about talking about future content because I don't want to disappoint people by talking about future content that never friggin' materializes. I've done that plenty, and I would rather not do that, if you know what I'm saying. If Patrick Picture says Trajan is a bad Euro, I wouldn't know. Oh, this sounds fun. I mean, jumbled mechanics looking for a theme. I guess we're talking about Trajan here, but that's kind of characteristic of Euros, isn't it? Arthur, you're a Roman military commander in Britain. You can either march on Rome to become emperor like Constantine or stay in Britannia and become legend. So, I think this sounds fantastic. I would play this. We do have Pendragon, however, which is kind of this. Kind of. So, it's a little, I don't know. I haven't played Napoleon yet. I'm looking forward to doing so as soon as I have some actual table space. But to get the actual table space, I got to finish this. As it is, I might have to move. This just to make space to do video on that table, or clear off another table to do video. That's probably what I'll end up doing. So in any case, next installment of GMT that actually almost happened this week. That show does require a considerable amount of prep, and it's been long enough that I would have to review the earlier episode. So this is coming, but it's maybe and maybe not next week. So this is BGG strategy. Okay, that's strategy games, not war games. Okay, gotcha. Took me a second to figure that out. This would not be one I'm familiar with. A funny thing happened on the way to the forum is also worth everybody's time, to be fair. So Let me check something here. Because somebody is already doing this, and it is somebody that I just subscribed to. So new channel alert here. Steve Dolges has done some comment on I, Napoleon, so just FYI on that. Hexed Encountered has done some video on it. And that's a couple weeks ago. I'm going to throw Hexed Encountered's first episode in the chat. I'm actually trying to find the specific video I was talking about. Agility Snips Gaming Table has a how to play series on it. I'll throw this in the chat. On I, Napoleon. You're welcome, Ted. So, but I'm excited about I, Napoleon too. So there's a couple of links to a couple different videos on I, Napoleon, and there's more. Offhand, Agility Snips Gaming Table has like a whole playthrough. I don't know if it's a whole playthrough or not, but he's got 19 videos on I, Napoleon. That's the last link I just put in. So that's probably the one to check. All right, so Mike Reed, thanks for stopping by. Perfidious Albion, hopefully, yeah. Do I ever do live playthrough? I have done live playthrough. It was horrifically bad content, and I find it... I won't say it was always horrifically bad content, but when we tried to do OCS, it was just bad content. OCS does not work like that. We've had more success with other things. I think something like GCACW can do very well live. You just need a lot of back and forth and movement where it's not like, I'm going to take the next 40 minutes to move my pieces, and then we'll have the combat phase. That kind of turn structure works very poorly for live play. So it is really dependent on the game specifically. I will 100% not promise to not do live content, but I'm not really set up for it right now either. I've actually got a long-term plan for this that looks like it's not happening this year. I basically need another camera and a filming rig that will film over that table. I know what I need. It's a couple $100 worth of stuff, and I don't have a couple $100 worth of right now. So in any case, all right. So what do I got? So we get the show with Dan tomorrow. I don't think we have a guest for tomorrow. Although I spent a decent amount of time earlier today lining up guests for the next several shows, which with mixed success. Let me put it that way. But we do absolutely have a show with Dan tomorrow, and we are going to have David Thompson on the Chit Show again pretty soon. I want to say it's not next week. I think it's the week after. And then we have an unboxing on Thursday, and I've got a giant pile. I've got like literally 15 videos that I have to edit. So you could see a ton. Rival Fury would totally work, actually. That's actually a really good pick, Mark. Thanks for stopping by. Rebel Fury would totally work live, actually. But you know, Fred has already done that too. So there's that. So there's live play of Rebel Fury floating around. But Molotov Cocktail, thanks for stopping by. And you know, I know you're interested in Ancients, right? So there's that. But yeah, I don't know what else I'll get done this week. The unboxing video's already done. Their shorts are already set up. That's all done. That's very low effort on my... The unboxing's a little more effort, but... Because I kind of spend a decent amount of time editing those nowadays. It used to be I would just like film it, and it would be right up from the phone. No editing, no nothing. I don't do that anymore. Everything gets edited now. Except the shorts. The shorts kind of get edited, but they're all less than a minute. And they're edited as I make the video, so there's no like post-processing. I can more or less just upload them from the phone. So there you go. That's not a terrible idea at all, right? Sometimes I have been known to forget to ask the designer to come on and help me with the unboxing. Foolishly. At least one recent release was like that, and I like punched myself in the head afterwards. It's like I could have asked this person to be on the show. And they would have totally happened. Yeah, do it. Sounds good. I'll play it. Why not? What the worst thing that's going to I've never played a pandemic game. The worst thing that's going to happen is I'll say I hate this and we're not going to play it again. So, that's a learning experience. That's valuable. And if it's that bad, I can always say an hour in and say, this kind of sucks, Jeff. Why did you bring this? I'm not even saying that would be the case. I'm just saying. Scott Gunn's Shack. Okay, well, there you go. I'm not sure. This may actually have been the video I was looking for, because the one I was looking for is a relatively new channel that I wasn't subscribed to until like yesterday or today. All right, folks, we are going to hit the road here. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Don't forget to like the video if you have enjoyed the show, and do subscribe to the channel or whatever it is on Twitch. It's you follow on Twitch and TikTok and subscribe on YouTube. There we go. So, all right. Well, take it off the calendar because it ain't happening. However, there has actually been some motion. Not for this year. It's too late for this year. We are just not happening. But there has been some motion on this for 2025. So we might have that. That is not the announcement you will hear next week. Let me put it that way. All right. So everybody have a great rest of the night. We will see you all again very soon.